Hello again, everyone. This is Nathaniel, and this is my Week 3 Multimedia Discussion Board. So I know we are all reviewing the same articles and individuals, but this is just a brief discussion overview of Gulick and Merton and Appleby and my takeaways from their articles, as well as how I think they apply to modern day public administration. So, with the study of public administration moving into the 1930s, we start to see some theorists moving away from the older theories of Wilson and Goodnow and White, but also still taking hold of the central principles. And Gulick is a good example of this, where he recognizes the needs for Taylor's scientific management, but also sees where government's evolution is starting to drift away from this humanistic focus, he called it. And so in his article, The Notes on the Theory of Organization, he focuses on a couple things, the growth of government, but also coordination of work, which is very necessary towards having a functioning organization, kind of like what Taylor was trying to get at with his uh, machinistic view of breaking down the essential roles and responsibilities of workers to understand and train them better. But the coordination of work is largely based off of, I think it was some of White's theories, where you have a division of labor and a fixed hierarchy where there are orders being passed down from above. Much similar to the argument that Follett was kind of debating against. And I think Gulick himself kind of recognizes that administration might be heading in a different direction when he says that government itself must take a more holistic approach, or rather be approached from both top and bottom, he says in section 3 of the classics book. So in section 2, he talks about the coordination of work and having subdivisions and men who are placed in a structure of authority so that the work may be coordinated together by orders of their superiors, which is necessary towards the overall efficiency. But he also recognizes that organizational patterns require work being approached from the top, which is a narrow focus as put forth by Follett, but also from the bottom. So getting that input from the subordinates as well is really key towards the evolution and the future of public administration. And so now we see with Merton, the things that Gulick was taking a step towards weren't far enough. Merton had to go further than that. In his essay on bureaucratic structure and personality, he talks about and actually criticizes Weber's ideal bureaucracy, claiming it to be dysfunctional and not efficient because of the fact that the rules and structures and characteristics that are built up within those limit the organization and its ability to evolve from that. And in his essay, he calls this trained incapacities, where in the situation, it refers to here he says it on page 98. The trained incapacity refers to that state of affairs in which one's abilities function as inadequacies or blind spots. Actions based upon training and skills which have been successfully applied in the past may result in inappropriate responses under changed conditions. So he says that as administration evolves and as technological advances happen, and as the industries change, government is not going to be able to keep up because of these strict bureaucracies and their strict rules and regulations that are inherent with those. So the more structured you have a government bureaucracy, yes, the more efficient it might seem in the meantime, but what happens when those rules need to be changed? Well, you have a problem there. they're interdependent when it comes to being optimally efficient, which just means that the bureaucracy's efficiency is its own worst enemy, because what works for a system of government then isn't always going to work in the future. So you have to be able to be flexible in accepting changes in government as time goes on. Paul Appleby was also one of those theorists who rallied against the politics administration dichotomy and really the old theories as structured by some of those founding individuals such as Taylor and White and Wilson. But really Appleby's main belief was that politics could not be separated from administration. You could not take or have administration without some influence or some political influence in that regard. Really, it was a central belief of his that you could not take it out of administration. And he believed that political involvement was a good thing and not evil as many of some of the progressive reformers were believing. He believed that political involvement in so much as administration was kind of like a check or a balance on administration and bureaucracy, kind of like the checks and balances in the Constitution, which help our government not to be so efficient all the time, but rather to keep their relative powers in check with each other. And so he believed that government, kind of like Gulick and Merton, that government was an ever-evolving machine, and that in order to keep up with the times, you had to be able to have a system that could change with those times. And really, he believed that that kind of started with the people, with the significance. He believed in the significance of attitudes and expectations. And he talks about this in page 120 of our book, where he says, "In my judgment, no one can serve the public as it should be served by a governmental official unless he has a public interest attitude with certain special characteristics. The carrying on of government involves action. No matter how many studies may be required, government in the final analysis is action." And I want to key in on his claim of a public interest attitude. In his view, government or public servants had to have a specific attitude when it came to serving their community. It was one of action, but also one of political influence, because as he recognized, a bureaucracy could not be kept in check unless it had those political powers watching over it. And so we take a look at the arguments of these reorganization theorists and Gulick and Merton and Appleby, and we compare them to the theories of Taylor and Wilson and White of structured bureaucracy in government. And we say, okay, how can these work together? How is reorganization the new era? Is it working? What do we do with the revolutionary concepts from some of those older theorists? And I take a look at those and I say that we need to have both of those working together. I think the contributions of Wilson and Taylor were absolutely important back then in their time, and they still carry lots of weight in the public administration of modern times. If you look at government, the bureaucracy itself is supposed to be this structured and well-functioning system of government, and that can't happen without scientific management and getting into the details and the weeds of how government is run and how systems of government and the power hierarchies and how control is made at the from the local government level all the way up to the federal level. I think those are so absolutely important. But I also look at the revolutionary work of Follett, and then moving into newer centuries with Gulick and Merton and Appleby, and the significance of attitudes and how public service is approached and talked about, but also how orders are given and how it's supposed to be able to kind of transition and move with the times. And I think that both of these systems are important because today government is always needing to evolve. And I think as the government continues to get bigger and more powers are uh, being given to the federal government, that just means more mandates being handed down to state governments and even local governments being affected the most, I think. And so being able to keep up with the increased mandates from the federal and state levels and being able to do so with limited revenues and resources and assets to do those, I think is a skill that us as administrators are going to have to continue to keep up with and try to solve as we step into the career field. So that wraps up my takeaways from these 3 articles. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys about your findings, and as well as kind of seeing what you think government's role is in this new era of big government and how it's supposed to evolve and kind of change with the times as well. So look forward to talking with you there.